sets the T-sharp for everything that, he does today and the wonderful work that he does today. And, so I absolutely concur with what you're saying, Henrik. I think the spiritual journey is an integral part of this. In fact, is the primary part of this.
Yeah.
I mean, the geopolitical stuff actually is just, almost, dealing with the symptoms. The real journey, without any shadow of doubt, is the spiritual realm. But let me add something here, because, one of the things that I come across quite a lot is, various spiritual groups, and because they know of the work that I do in trying to expose the excesses of, the geopolitical agenda, and their attitude is, we don't need to go there.
Yeah, well,
no,
there you go. Yeah.
It's all done. I mean, we've just got to actually sit tight until 2012, and then it's all going to change.
Yeah.
Well, let me just sort of cast this as an observation. One of the things I think we can all agree on is that we are contributing to our future in our thought process.
Yeah.
Right? I think we understand that. I mean, many people actually have reached the point where, they know very, very well that, it is their thinking that actually creates their reality in one way, shape or form.
Yes.
And here we are with an opportunity to create a collective reality, a reality that we would like to see, beyond 2012. And one of the things that is fascinating for me is that remote viewers apparently cannot see beyond this veil.
So I've heard. Yeah, so I've heard.
It gives me reason to think that it's still being written, it's still being created. So for those people who are sitting back and just sort of waiting for all this to happen, consider the possibility that in taking that action or inaction, what you're actually sanctioning is the current geopolitical agenda. Alternatively, I don't have any existential commitment to a particular outcome, but, what I do know is that the excesses and the inhumanity that is practiced by those who believe that they are the rightful rulers of this global fiefdom is totally unacceptable to me today and very definitely for the future.
Yeah.
And consequently, in whatever little way I can, and there's many, many other people obviously doing much the same, we will do whatever we can and will continue to do whatever we can to try and raise this awareness and encourage people to participate in this process.
Of course.
Because otherwise what they're going to do is just sanction more of the same.
Yeah. Exactly. This is about raising the awareness so people can start making these choices, for themselves in order to be aware of it, what is going on and so forth. And again, when one do that, they're no longer in the hands of someone else that is controlling their lives, and at that point everyone, could think differently of where we should be going or where they individually should be going and so forth. But at least the scenario we have in front of us right now is that people are so dumbed down and so incredibly, inundated with propaganda, as it were, so they not even be able to reach up to the level where they get in contact with themselves to understand their own processes, and that they are being, lulled into this state of ignorance, and that needs to be overcome. And when that point is reached, then we can discuss, where we should be going or whatever. But I agree with you. Yeah, definitely.
Well, Henrik, I think from listening to you in the past, I think you are a student of Gurdjieff. And, just to pick up on a piece of Gurdjieff, and by the way, I will say that I am a great student of early 20th century Russian philosophy. One of the reasons I like that period is because it's completely unadulterated. It's not conditioned by movies and television. It was philosophy that was established the hard way, if you like, by going within.
Yes.
But Gurdjieff made his observation. He said, look, as we go through this journey and as we enter into the spiritual part of this journey, there's the way of the fakir, there's the way of the yogi, and there's the way of the monk. And in each of those cases, the journey is actually quite selfish. And in particular, he focused on the way of the monk because, the monk can completely sort of disassociate himself from, the rest of the world. He can go and live in a monastery. He can go and do his sort of, chants 5 times a day or whatever. All he has to do is contribute to the work of the community. He knows he's going to get fed, get water, get a bed, and he can sort of hang out there until he leaves this mortal realm.
Mm.
But Gurdjieff said, there's also the fourth way. And the fourth way is about going through that experience. So by all means, go the way of the yogi, go the way of the fakir, go the way of the monk. But when you've gone through the process, it's really important to bring yourself out and work out how that's going to be, or how you can apply your knowledge in the wider realm. And I think, a classic example of this, and this is a guy who doesn't shout about his spirituality, but, for me, Nelson Mandela, who was under arrest for 26 years, but he never lost his faith that he had a purpose. And that 26 years, obviously, spent, much of the time going deep within himself, was tremendous preparation. So we never know, when the time will be when we can actually make that contribution out into the wider realm. But I don't think many people would argue that Nelson Mandela has been a major contributor to the political process over the last decade or so. And it was the 26 years of house arrest that probably prepared him to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I know that there are, ideas about him and his background and so forth. But as you say, no one could argue that he has been, a big part of it. Definitely, I agree with you there. Yeah.
Just to go back to some of the spiritual aspects, though, for a second, Henrik.
Yes.
There's a couple of, I think, an important message. One, there was a quote I came across a little while ago, which is actually from Parsival. And the quote is here. It's the student meeting with his master, and he says, "You say you yearn for the Grail, you foolish man. I am grieved to hear that. For no man can ever win the Grail unless he is known in heaven and called by name to the Grail." And I think that's a very interesting telling remark, because this is a process that I actually don't think is very easy to kick off yourself. I think that it's almost like there's a timer within the DNA, and so you can do some sort of preparatory work, but there comes a point when something kicks in. It's a bit like, adolescence. I mean, we know puberty and adolescence kick in at 13,
yes,
give or take, and some have said that's starting to happen earlier. And I think it's the same with this awakening. It's a natural process. I think everybody has the opportunity, and it's really a question of, how should I say, being ready to embrace it as and when it arises. And there's one book, if there's one book that I would recommend to people who are going through this process, or are friends or relatives of people who are starting to go through the process. And it's a book that's called Spiritual Emergency.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now, it's actually compiled by Stanislav Grof and his wife Christina. And he's changed the phraseology now, because now he uses the term spiritual emergence. But, he pulled this book together with a number of contributors. Another number of his contemporaries, like R.D. Laing, Roberto Assagioli, who, of course, is the guy behind psychosynthesis, and Ram Dass. Now, all of these people went through their own spiritual emergency, i.e. it was a time in life where, their whole reality was ripped out from under them and they had to relearn. And they actually became, if you like, a community within California, and now, they do some tremendous work in California in helping people, go through this process. Tragically, I'm not aware of a similar type of, I'll use the word institution, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
There's not a type of community available that I'm aware of in Western Europe.
Yeah. You mentioned that idea also, that this is something that could be something of the almost in the DNA, if you will, an activation of the DNA. This could be, if one is so inclined to think of this in evolutionary terms, that we as a species potentially are we have been coming up to this point, so to speak, and at this stage, then something is triggered, if you will, within that has been lying dormant or what have you within the DNA that mainly opens up a new a new area, a new way of thinking. And again, of course, this has been happening before. There have been, enlightened people, so to speak, that have been walking this planet many thousands of years ago. So this is by no means anything new, but potentially in the mass scale, if you will, that this potentially could be happening in, and what I think we are seeing right now, then, that this is something that's becoming more and more common. I think that idea is very interesting, that this has to do with the evolution of something really unlocking at this potential time here, at this particular time here. What do you think, Ian? Do you think that could be something that is behind this? And again, that gets us back to the question of the time we're in at this point. So much is speeding up, more information. It's really incredible time to be alive, isn't it, right now?
Oh, without any shadow of doubt. I mean, I wouldn't have missed this for anything. I mean, I am just so glad that I had the opportunity to be here right now. I think you're absolutely on the button here. And if we look at the work of Terence McKenna and his Time Wave Zero, I mean, Terence McKenna knew nothing about 2012 when he put together the Time Wave Zero. And when he was doing this analysis of the evolution of consciousness, he came up with this end date. And I think, if I'm speaking from the top of my head here, but I've got a feeling that his end date was November the 17th, 2012. And what he actually identified was that man's consciousness would sort of expand, if you like, on an exponential basis. And something like, 90% of this evolutionary process would occur in the last 17 seconds. I mean, it was a very, very interesting hypothesis. And then after he'd put that together, that was when he came across the whole 2012 phenomena. And of course, what he acknowledged was that he had done his work independently, but on the basis that he was just 5 weeks out from his end date of the Time Wave Zero to the end date of the Mayan calendar. I mean, he realized that there was obviously some relationship here.
Yes.
And one of the things, I think I might have mentioned this before, but what we should also acknowledge is that this 2012 phenomenon, and I think many of us are aware that something is going to happen. Anybody who tells you they know for sure is delusional.
Yeah, I agree.
And our challenge is to prepare ourselves. I mean, think of what we were talking about earlier with the person who is not ready for the shamanic experience. I think we're sort of getting into something like that. We've actually got to prepare ourselves for something that is way outside the bounds of our current perception. And that in itself may be what determines, who goes through and who doesn't, for example.
Sure.
And I also have this sort of vision that every time we come up with what we think is going to happen at 11/11 on December 21st, 2012, the celestial scriptwriters go, oh, shit, that's another one off the list. Because their challenge is to come up with something that none of us have thought of.
There you go.
So I absolutely, concur with you that, something is occurring here. It's been occurring. We've, if you like, the process got this kickstart with the publication of Jose Arguelles's book, The Mayan Factor.
Yeah.
Because, it doesn't matter what anybody tells you, until that book was published, 2012 was not in the public consciousness. Okay, now, there's another researcher, Jeff Stray, who in my opinion is probably one of the primary researchers into the 2012 phenomena. He's the webmaster of diagnosis2012.co.uk. Mm-hmm. He's the author of the book Beyond 2012, Catastrophe or Ecstasy. And Jeff has spent probably the best part of nearly 20 years compiling anything and everything from all around the world, from folklore, from mythology, from near-death experiences, from out-of-body experiences,